being here.
Absolutely. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
me too.
yeah. And I'm sure that this will provoke things for us to talk about later on, things that are going on with me, with IWN, with not just Ecuador, but literally the whole equator around the planet. And there's a lot of forces uh, in action right now. And to me, that's like, kayaking a wave train. And I know kayakers recognize this in Richwood, but when you're in a wave train, when you're on the top of the wave, you've got ultimate agility. And when you're down in the trough, that's where you generate momentum. And we're in a point of ultimate agility right now. And I think, oh, look at Pat. God, he is going stratospheric. Oh my God. And he's in my kitchen in Mexico. That's so good.
Mm.
All right, pop us in, Rich. Did you already do it?
Yeah.
All right, I see Josiah's screen. How do I get rid of that? Or do I want to?
I don't know. It says
Participants.
my screen sharing is paused.
Well, I see all. Hmm. I don't see the people. I see all right, well, I guess. Yeah, oh, there's Deanne's here. Great. Awesome. Excellent. Tony's here, Rodrigo's here, Isabella's here, Robin's here. Pat definitely wins the look of the morning, though.
Well,
Thank you. What a great call yesterday, Pat.
yeah, thank you, Chris, for sharing. That was just magical.
Yeah, really juicy.
Mm.
Hola, Isabella. Always love seeing you. Thank you for your continued support and discipline and contribution. Yes, yeah. Rodrigo, mi hermano.
Mm.
Yeah,
Hola, Chris, everybody.
yeah. Oh,
Hey,
Guille's here
And
Rodrigo.
by
too.
coincidence, I'm wearing Fuentes hat.
Una día, esta presentación es necesito en español porque una día tengo, 10 de español y 20 de inglés. So es importante cambio en el futuro.
Muy bien,
Um,
I do it.
well, let's we do what we can to start on time. So it's 10 o'clock. And as usual, the first thing that we do is drop into a space, drop into a meditative space, a contemplative space, an aware and allow space. So let me pull up my reading tool and we will begin. And then people will continue to arrive, I'm sure, as the moments go on. Uh, Good morning, Al. Always lovely to see you here. So I'm sure that you all know how to get into that space, whether you use your breath, your posture, your context, your surroundings. So you've found that place now. And today, unlike the historical meditations that we've done, I have something to read you. And the title of it is Learning in Complexity: Why Shared Spaces Matter. Solitude reveals inner patterns. Shared spaces reveal whether those patterns hold under pressure. Many seekers are comfortable in controlled environments, quiet conversations, one-on-one exchanges, internal reflection. These are valuable and necessary. They are also limited. Groups introduce unpredictability. More people mean more perspectives, emotions, interruptions, misunderstandings, and competing needs. Noise happens, plans shift, reactions surface unexpectedly. This is not a failure of structure. It's the point. Life does not offer ideal conditions. Presence, clarity, and regulation must function amid complexity. Shared environments create realistic fields in which these capacities are tested and strengthened. Group settings remove the illusion of control. They require sensing, adjusting, and responding in real time. They expose habits that remain hidden in solitude. This is not about fixing a problem. It is about integration. Strong analytical ability can become a refuge. Explanation can replace experience. Group work gently disrupts this pattern by demanding participation rather than interpretation. In shared spaces, insight must coexist with emotion. Awareness must operate alongside friction. Understanding must remain embodied. The invitation is not to find the perfect group. It is to stay open and notice what appears. Workshops, circles, shared practices, learning environments, or collective rituals. You will recognize the right space not because it is comfortable, but because it is alive and challenging in a constructive way. Over time, something stabilizes. Your truth becomes less fragile, less dependent on control, more responsive than reactive. You learn to trust yourself in motion, not just in reflection. That is where understanding becomes lived wisdom. So today we have Josiah Cain. Josiah and I met in a super auspicious way at Esalen Institute many years ago. For those of you who are on the first call with Dave Zabosky, you know that uh, uh, Dave and Robin and I also met at Esalen. So Esalen has been a fertile ground for me and many of us for many decades. Um, uh, I assume I would know if I'm not being heard right now. I've got a new microphone and a new headset. I'm getting all pro over here. Uh, and so Josiah is one of those people that I meet, that I met, and knew quite quickly that there was a harmony and a coherence. And that harmony and coherence was, it's really one of the most satisfying things I experience in life. Um, he is a pattern recognizer and a systems analyst. But the patterns and systems he recognizes are the ones that I care most deeply about. He cares about earth and soil. He cares about water. He cares about connective tissue. He cares about light and shadow. He cares about all living things and all our hooved and feathered and uh, winged cousins on Earth. Uh, and he is he is so consistent in that manner. It's impossible for me to be in a conversation with him without dropping into these topics and places of significant importance. So I called him up a while back and asked if he would be willing to participate, and pleasantly he said yes. And so I'm so glad that all of you have chosen to be here of all the places you could be this morning. And I will present to you, my dear friend, Josiah Raisin Cain.
Thanks, Chris. Happy to be here. Lots of familiar faces and a few new ones. So greetings. I am in Sonoma County where I have a shared property. It's been raining a lot. It's been walking around in water. There's three ways for me to get out of here. And at one point, I think maybe all of them were closed. Flooding in one direction and trees down in another. And it's been kind of a wild time, but also cozy. And it happens almost every year. So we're used to it. Yeah, so I'm a landscape architect by trade. I have sort of, I started with landscape architecture and then layered in a bunch of permaculture stuff, and incrementally that has bled over into business and urban design in cities. And so, for the last 20, 30 years, I've been pretty focused on trying to reconcile what I have come to consider the myth between built systems and environmental systems being in opposition. It's clear to me that the built environment works better when it has natural systems and patterns and processes actively engaged. And that's been a journey. It started out really with a passion for integrating human behavior with natural systems, and it seemed obvious to me. Fairly quickly, I kind of ran into the technocratic engineering apparatus that is the way we do things in the West. And so I went on quite an odyssey of trying to understand first costs and return on investment and, externalities and how to capture benefits that we weren't acknowledging. And that's been quite a journey, from things like, the United States Green Building Council and payback on solar panels and things like this. And I feel like, what I'm going to show today is sort of where I've been in somewhat of a liminal space, not working for a big engine, but really doing my own kind of consulting work and contemplative work. And I feel like these things have all kind of come together in a way where we can't really separate environmental benefits from either benefits to ourselves, human beings, or benefits to our technocratic and financial metrics. They're all tied together. And so I'm just going to share some of what I've been thinking about, if I can find the screen I'm looking for. And can people see that?
Definitely.
Okay, great. So interestingly enough, when I met Chris, I was teaching a workshop at Esalen called The Spiritual Ecology of Business. And I was really, exploring myself and inviting people to explore with me the relationship between our spirituality as it pertains to the planet and the seeming sort of cognitive dissonance that most of us are engaged in with our work, and how the things we do for work are very often in opposition to the way we actually feel about our relationship to the planet. And another workshop that I taught there later was around this idea of all species wellness. And the basic premise there being, if you are not surrounded by biodiversity or other species, there's probably a pretty hard cap on your potential wellness as an individual. I mean, there's a reason those other species are not near you. If it's not a healthy environment for other species, there's a very good chance it's not an optimally healthy environment for you. And that expands into relational elements and not just the canary in the coal mine. So one of the things that I've been exploring, and where this all came from for me, was a strong interest in environmental psychology. Our moods, our behavior, most of the way that we experience the world is greatly impacted by our surroundings. And most of the time, we're not really aware of that. And if we are aware of that, it's very experiential, like I'm having a moment, but the reality is we're designing our own psychological wellness all the time. We live in environments that we create. Interestingly, most of the time we create them for financial or technical goals, not to optimize our own psychological health. And we're living with the outcome of that. I'm not going to get into sort of where I think a lot of us got some of these ideas from similar places, but Rob Thayer was one of my professors. I went to UC Davis and studied landscape architecture. Gary Schneider was there. I had a chance to work with him a bit. And I was very much influenced by sort of deep ecology and environmental psychology space, even as I was sort of pursuing a professional design degree. It all kind of frames into these nested layers of, what is the relationship between the organism and the biosphere? And there are these interstitial components of trying to understand layers of interaction, if you will, and that kind of progresses from who are we, what is our, immediate family, so to speak, our community, the larger ecosystem, and how do those systems nest into biospheric health, which we're confronted with now and are having real struggles trying to understand how to engage with the scale of the biosphere. It's this incremental, they call it non-point source impacts, things that you can't specifically identify, but collectively are causing major issues. And the most common place you see non-point source impacts is stormwater. And it's like, well, we know there's pollutants in the stormwater, but we can't identify exactly where they're coming from and go stop it. They're just coming from everywhere. And that's always been really intriguing to me, because that suggests that we are doing it wrong in little tiny ways everywhere all at once. And the antidote to that is to do it right in little tiny ways everywhere, clearly. But nobody's really thinking that way. As a result, we're dealing with this conflict. Are we going in this direction, or are we going in that direction? And, there's a lot of anxiety around it. So much so that we're mapping the impacts. And we're already seeing a couple of degrees increase, and that correlates directly to mortality, ambulance responses, urban heat island, which is an engineered problem. It's not just the planet heating up. Cities are on average 7 degrees hotter than that place was before a city was put there. In the worst cases, it's more like 14 degrees. So the difference between, a 100-degree heat wave and a 114-degree heat wave can be hundreds or thousands of deaths. And that is entirely engineered. Those cities are heating up because their thermal mass, there's no moisture there. There's no plants there, which evaporate moisture to maintain temperature, and everything starts to heat up. And so that's one of the things we can look at is like, okay, well, how do we address that? It also, we're seeing this dramatic decline in wildlife. So when we talk about all species, 70% of the wildlife has disappeared since 1970 in most of our lifetimes. It's insane. That's totally bonkers. And we're at a point where most of the biomass is humans and our pets, not wildlife. And to me, that's super alarming. And I don't know why it's not something everyone is more aware of and freaking out about. But it's there. And we're also seeing, not surprisingly, mental disorders going through the roof. And we hear about it all the time. And we talk about, well, it's because of tech, it's because of crowding, it's because of poverty, it's because, all those things are true. But what we know is, somewhere in the neighborhood of 1 in 10 human beings has a reported mental disorder, which is also bonkers. And so trying to, to me, there's a direct correlation between removing ourselves from healthy natural environments with other species that we can interact with, both from a physical health standpoint and from a mental health standpoint. It's making us a little crazy. I think we all have to admit that the world that we've created, the default urban world, is not designed to make us happy. And the tools we have to deal with that are not really making it better. So, I mean, when you're having mental stress, I'm pretty sure studying charts like this to try and self-diagnose is probably not reducing the amount of stress that you have, probably not making you feel better about yourself either. And then we're confronted with a million different ways to basically treat the symptom. And most of them are stressing us out because we don't know what we should be doing. Should we be on a fruit diet or a paleo diet, or should we be doing keto, or should we be going to the doctor, or should we be running all the time, or maybe you're not supposed to run and you should be doing weights, but maybe that's bad for your joints. It doesn't contribute to calm mental health. And so we're bombarded with commerce. And if you just buy these products, then somehow you're going to feel better. And we all know that's also not working very well. And employers know this. And there's a reason I'll come back to why I'm bringing it to this sort of employee world. But most employees are thinking they would go somewhere else if they could. 85% of us are actively or passively looking for a different environment to work in. And 87% of us are actively disengaged or not engaged. What does that mean? What we're seeing in the lower right, and I just kind of juxtapose some of these things, is when you design what is being called biophilic elements, which is just love of life, biophilia. But what that means is living species around you, plants, animals, habitat, healthy environments. Sick days goes down by almost 20%. Productivity goes up by like 15%. Self-reported happiness. All these things matter to people who do financials. Bank of America did one of the greenest buildings of its kind in history at the time. I think it was 2012. And they claimed what was paying for it was a 9% increase in worker productivity. And that's where things get really interesting for me, because we've been chasing our tail around like payback period on solar panels. And they tell us things like, well, it's more expensive to do green building, so we can't do it, but maybe we can do it if it's only 5 or 10% more. And then somebody was like, well, actually, if we look at the life of the loan, it's a 20 or 30% or year depreciation. And, we can spend a bunch more money up front because it's going to save us money throughout the life of the building. If we put solar panels on it, it's going to cost us a lot in day one, but we're going to pay less for energy and it's going to pay itself off over time. And where we've landed now is, yes, operating the building is 10 times more expensive than building the building. But it turns out that the payroll of the people in that building is 10 times more expensive than the operations, or 100 times more expensive than the cost of building the building. And so even if you're saving money on solar panels, if people aren't more productive because they're in a better environment, you're still losing a lot of money purely financially. So this is not really where my mindset is at, but it's been really important for me to understand these things because the people you're trying to convince need to understand these things. So we're kind of looking at this as the optimum habitat that the collective genius of humanity's engineering and design prowess can give us. And it's missing a lot. We know that. And I kind of take it back to a more spiritual thing and this kind of traditional, you have to go in to get out. And I've definitely subscribed to that. And sometimes you really have to go inward and really just see what's in here to get out of whatever space it is that you feel trapped in. But I find that can also be stressful, especially when people are really not in a mental space to be able to confront that internal world. Sometimes you have to go out to find your way in. And one of the best ways, I think most of us here find that through interactions with the environment, whether that's, kayaking, which Chris brought up, rock climbing, mountain climbing, or just interacting with animals. And interacting with animals has a bunch of these really interesting benefits: physical health, cognitive performance, better sleep, mental health, productivity, people show up for work more often when they have regular interaction with other species. And improve learning, more neuroplasticity. All of these things can be tracked to animal interactions. And there's an interesting science around, mostly it's been between people, this thing called emotional contagion, which I think is a terrible brand, but you can empathically really take on another person's emotions, behaviors. I think we know this intrinsically or actually. But this can happen with animals also. And I think in our current sort of strangely isolated and confrontational situation, often it feels safer to actually engage in emotional contagion with another species than it does with another human. And so it's important that we have those interactions. It's really good for our mental and emotional health. But if we're withholding that experience because people feel dangerous or unsafe, it's actually causing problems for us internally. And that can express as physical issues as well. And so I've been exploring what happens if we capitalize on that opportunity to interact with other animals, whether it's a an emotional support pet or whether it's a wild animal. And this was really interesting. I was doing some research, finding that people have cathartic experiences that diminish everyday problems. They can be brief and momentary, but also life-changing. And I thought humbling was interesting. Like it can really reset your sort of ego, apparently. And as you can see here at Yellowstone, they have seen people move to tears by the sight of a wolf. And a single interaction has caused life change for people. So there's very well documented. And I think for all of us, we've had these experiences. And it's really important that we don't allow them to disappear from the human experience. I put this together a while ago and I forget which island in the North Sea this is from, but they did some really interesting studies on this island. It was a kind of remote island. There was a sheep culture, or is a sheep culture, and very isolated Nordic culture. And they were having mental anxiety that hadn't existed in the past. And they tracked it back to both the disappearance of the lifestyle of raising sheep and the comfort that brought them because they understood who they were, but also some species that have been disappearing, including an eagle and some land species that were disorienting to them, as like they didn't understand who they were in the same way that they did before. So there's a whole thing about identity that relates to the other species that you interact with on a daily basis. And when that starts to shift, it can actually be very unnerving for people. They lose their tether or their self-identity, their confidence about their lives and their culture makes them anxious. So I thought that was really interesting. Along those lines, I thought, it'd be good to share where I come from, which is Northern California. This is the property that I grew up on. I was very lucky to grow up in the wilderness, and we had, I had daily interactions with all of these species, not every single one every day, but I would probably see at least one of these animals every day, and spend a lot of my time pursuing those interactions, fishing, going out and seeing what I could discover. And things like rattlesnakes actually keep you very alert and aware of your surroundings. And, you can't say that the rattlesnake is particularly healthy for me, but you can say, and now with a lot of data behind it, that the increased awareness and increased alertness and the way that snakes help force me to really be present and interact with my environment has measurable physical, emotional, and mental benefits. So just another example of it, it might not always be trying to design the optimum thing, but knowing that you're in a dynamic environment with other living beings that actually bring you into the present and help shape your experience. They've transferred this into buildings. NASA was doing research on um, living environments in outer space, and they were tracking like every toxin and pollutant from plastics, off-gassing, formaldehyde, tourmaline, all these different volatile organic compounds. And a bunch of them were disappearing. And one of the things that they had put in those environments were plants to help with oxygen levels. And they couldn't figure out what was happening to these chemicals. And they isolated it to the plants, but they couldn't find it in the plants. It got all the way down to the point where they were grinding up the plants and putting them under microscopes and trying to find these toxins. Gone. What they figured out is that the plants were actually metabolizing these toxins and turning them into other things. So now we're, looking at cancer causing toxins being processed by other living species in our environment. And at this giant office building in India, 50,000 square foot building, they just added plants and double digit improvements across the board. 42% of blood oxygen going up by 1% if you're in the building for one day. Pretty amazing. I mean, those are numbers that would be hard for your doctor to produce. Eye irritation down 52%, respiratory 34%, headaches 25% less, lung impairment down by 12%, asthma down by almost 10%. This is just from putting plants in a building. Never mind having an actual healthy environment beyond the building. I was in Medellin early last year, about a year ago, and they're going crazy reintegrating habitat basically, but also just vegetation. They claim in 6 years they've dropped the temperature 2 degrees centigrade. And we just saw at the beginning of this how many people die for every 1 degree increase, right? So they're going big, and they think they can actually stabilize the climate of the whole city this way. It's pretty cool. And they're doing a lot of really fun design stuff. City Hall has a green roof and a living wall on it now. These are some projects that I've had the good fortune to work on. This is California Academy of Sciences. It's now the largest contiguous patch of native dune habitat in San Francisco. Ironically, all of Golden Gate Park used to be dunes, or a lot of it. But that was replaced with this more manicured park. And so on this project, there was an inspiration to bring back that dune ecosystem, and people just flock here to volunteer and to visit the roof and to see all the biodiversity up there. Birds are training their young to fly up there. It's pretty fun. This is another project, all native plants on a Section 8 public housing building, 12 stories up in downtown San Jose, which is not a very friendly urban environment. Last time I was here, I got dive bombed by native hummingbirds, which was pretty crazy. Turns out they're quite territorial. And we did put native medicinal plants around the air intakes just for fun. They filter out pollen, so I wasn't worried about that, but maybe they'll get some tincture value in their air quality. This is a 4-acre Microsoft campus rooftop, all native plants. And what's cool about this is employees can come in to the garage, go up to the roof on the elevator, walk across this roof, and there's songbird habitat and whatnot, and get a burrito or a coffee at the little cafe, and then walk through this little park environment and descend down into their workspace without ever really seeing any security or any people that aren't part of their team. It's a completely different idea about how you might get to your corporate, cubicle every morning. So these companies know what's happening, and they're actively, a lot of this stuff I learned working for companies like Google and Microsoft, who are actively trying to create these environments for the employees for financial reasons, which to me is great news. It might be cynical in terms of what their motivations are, but when you get inside those organizations, there's actually these pockets of really healthy, interesting culture who are out there fighting the good fight, trying to make these things happen, which is amazing. And it's been amazing to be, part of those teams. So, some of the work that I've been doing is trying to develop this into more urban design strategies, where you're really looking at, your very personal internal life and connect that to more community type spaces and collective experience and how that can be expressed in the physical environment. Really trying to map that into like what types of features could we actually incorporate to achieve these goals. Things like water gardens, infiltration basins, medicinal plants, bioretention systems, wastewater treatment wetlands, using wetland plants to treat sewage in a visible, interactive way rather than with machines. And really trying to understand if there's a mindfulness component. How do we really support individual human health and wellness, and not just at an abstract level, but like understanding what kind of spaces actually foster healthy internal life. And then really trying to map those spatially, where can these things occur based on the program that's happening in those places, and make sure that we're able to function properly, what some of those spaces might look like. Can you meander around? Do you have mounds to sort of break up visual? And if you get into biophilia, the nerds have really gone crazy, like taking very specific experiences, whether they're visual or auditory or sensual, and actually trying to recreate those types of opportunities. I tend not to go all the way into those kind of like spreadsheet nerd worlds, but I'm very grateful that people are doing that, and I can reference them and be like, am I doing this right? So anyway, just developing those things from a design standpoint to understand what some of these different spaces and different experiences might be like. Introverts have a place to go. Extroverts have a place to go. There's places to gather. There's places where you can have meetings and talk. There's places where you can have meditative space. And I guess just riffing a little bit now, if people are really interested in this, there's an interactive kit some friends of mine have worked on called the Living Infrastructure Field Kit, livinginfrastructure.org. I think some people here probably know David McConville and Don Danby. They've been really driving this. And I'm just going to show some examples. I mean, this is where we applied this to the entire downtown of San Jose, California, the middle of Silicon Valley. Tried to understand, regardless of who owns property, are there underutilized lands along the river that would help us actually bring back the process and function of the river as a central guiding element in the downtown that would help cool down the downtown with vegetation and shade and evapotranspiration, and also provide opportunities for habitat to occur and for people to engage and interact with all that. And, it's kind of amazing because San Jose, California is the 10th largest city in the United States. It's larger than San Francisco. And there's a river that runs right through the downtown that has beaver, river otters, bald eagles, bobcats, salmon, steelhead. It's kind of crazy. And no one who lives there really understands that, except maybe some of the homeless people that camp there. But they're talking about channelizing it like Los Angeles. And so this study was commissioned that we did to try and understand what the alternative to that might be. And it really is about just creating enough space for the natural systems and processes to operate. And you already have a lot of this sort of all species habitat opportunity happening there. And so it's more about trying to preserve what's there than it is really like Los Angeles. You really would have to start over. But we went through and we looked at like, what are some spaces? This freeway overpass is a great example of just underutilized land right next to the river. You can see the river on the left side there. And just looking at, well, what if we captured all this dirty stormwater coming off these roads and took this piece of land that's not even really being utilized and turned it into something beautiful? It would create habitat, but also filter and clean water. And we started to look at like, what are some toolkits of different interventions that could happen without disrupting the systems that are in place. So it's not about a radical change of how cities are designed. It's just about better utilization of space, better resource management, better infrastructure design. And we found some really interesting things. Right now, they're pumping clean, cold groundwater that gets into basements because there's high groundwater tables right into the stormwater system. And we're like, well, could that be redirected into the specific holes where baby salmon really need cold water with high oxygen to make it through the summer? Why aren't we directing this clean, cold water into those specific opportunity zones rather than just blending it into surface water coming off the streets that's polluted and warm. Not a huge adjustment, but probably would have a dramatic impact on salmon survivability in the city. I've written about this as a thing called riparian urbanism. The idea here is, when you're walking through nature, you know where a river is from a mile away or more. You can see the change in vegetation. You can see the shift in the landscape pattern. But in the city, everything's homogeneous until you trip over a levee and fall in a channel. And why can't cities have that same gradient where the character of the city shifts within a quarter mile, half mile of the channel? And maybe those areas just flood naturally from time to time, and it's not a problem. There can still be buildings there. You just have to design them to be able to have higher floors and things like that. So really looking at how can cities start to reflect the diversity that we see in nature to respond to differences in what's going on there, elevation, et cetera. And then just looking at ways to actually design them. And this is my last slide, but there's just a vision for one of the things we talked about, and this is back to Guadalupe River in San Jose, California. Rather than compressing the river into a channel and lining it, what if the actual buildings became an extension of the channel, and you just build the city up along the river, and you have a contiguous elevation that's impermeable, and you can do living walls and living roofs, and you can have trees on structure. Why not just blend the edge of what's built and what's natural in these particular really dense urban environments? And so you can see this sort of stepping up, and each level has another terrace of habitat. And the flood at that point could be between two buildings, but it looks and feels like it's all a natural system. You don't have to make a concrete channel. We're talking about something that happens every 50 or 100 years. So 49 or 99 years out of 100, or whatever, the 98% of the time, 99% of the time, it just reads like a natural system. And then 1% of the time, you have a 24-hour emergency where water is pushing up against walls. But that's a very rare occurrence. So really, we're designing for like intervals of 10, 20, 50, 100-year flood events. We're not designing for something that happens every day. So the opportunity, I think, is there to really rethink how all this system not only can provide those opportunities for biophilic interactions with other species, but also reduce temperature, sequester carbon, sequester toxins and pollutants, provide clean water, stabilize groundwater, and reduce drought. Also reducing energy use for air conditioning, which is like a third of commercial energy use, water use for air conditioning, which is a similar amount of water use. So reallocating how we're thinking about resources by allowing natural systems and processes to just do their work, and simultaneously provide amazing places where we can live if we choose to live in cities. So that's what I wanted to share today. I hope it brings open some interesting conversation, and happy to hear people's thoughts and responses to that.
Rich, I guess it's on you.
It's on me to create the breakout rooms.
Yes.
Sorry, amazing conversation. As I thank you so much. I was normally I'm preparing ahead, but I was trying to do my best to prepare, but I was very engaged, and a lot of what you share connects back to my own kind of professional life and space creation. And I was just looking up the true definition of biophilic and the connection of animals and happiness in people's life. And so thank you so much. So I've got a little math to do. I'm going to create some breakout rooms. We're going to break out into groups of three. We kind of keep the time tight with the idea that each person has a couple minutes to share their thoughts. Um, and then we'll come back together after about 10 minutes and share those thoughts with the group. So I'm going to create 6 breakout rooms, and we're going to be gone for a bit. Chris, do you have anything else to share on that?
No, I'm sure there'll be a lot afterwards, but I'm fired up.
I know I'm
Josiah,
taking
that
notes.
was so good. Uh, and it's the kind of optimism that IWN is here for. Um, uh, it both, and the thing that struck me was when you said uh, non-point source, and that there are too many small things contributing, and we just can't identify them, let alone manage them. And by the same token, when we start make paying attention to these things, there's no thing too small that doesn't contribute to the benefit or the reversal of these things. So that was a great concept for me.
Thanks for catching that. I really that's been like just a mind exploder for me. It's like every time I hear some agency say, "Oh, it's non-point source pollution," we can't deal with that. It's like, oh my God, that's the biggest cop out ever. You're basically just saying we're doing it all wrong, and you can't do anything about that. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, why don't we just do it all right, and then we'll
Yeah.
have non-point source happiness.
That's so good. Uh,
Okay, get ready. We're opening the rooms. You guys enjoy diving in.
Hi.
Hello, Ashley.
Hi, Rich. We were many and now we're down to two.
I know. And we have one other person. Um,
Let's see.
Marcy, do we have you?
Hi, Marcy. Let's see.
Marcy,
Marcy, I
you're
can't hear you,
muted.
but I want to because you're effusive, but I want to hear your effusiveness. Can you unmute?
She's
I can and I have.
Hi, welcome. Is iPhone, is that someone, is that a AI or is that a person?
I think that's a person.
iPhone 73. Can you unmute?
That's okay. So, oh, we had him.
Hi. Oh,
Oh, they did. We were so close. Well, Marcy, the algorithm seems to like to put us together. I love this, how we always
Yes,
end up in the same
yes,
place.
it is
Um,
so.
um, I'll kick it off and leave it to you guys. I mean, of all the places I've worked, I think, and I love the fact that it's tying into our communities and the workplace and the value of being connected to nature and this idea of biophilic and having kind of mass say, hey, uh, happiness of people that we work with is higher, longevity, productivity, all of those things like are super valuable. And to have it done from his point of view was I I don't know. This is a powerful conversation that's going on in my life around my workplace and past workplaces. So I was frantically. We're going to share the presentation with everybody, but I was frantically taking screenshots to capture these ideas. And especially, I
mm,
work in an environment that's also an animal rescue center, and we've never thought of it this way. Um, but we have 15 free range dogs in this art studio I work at. And and it is chaos. Like there's no other way to say that it's absolute chaos on a daily basis. But to think of our space, like would it be as creative without the animals? And we're thinking of moving it to another facility, and the loss would be tremendous not to be around the animals. It would just be tremendous. I think our creative energy would fall precipitously. So I don't know, I was
Rich,
super engaged.
I am absolutely with you. Biophilia has been, I think it was created as a word in 1973, and it was so desperately needed in terms of all the forms of classical love. The love
Mm.
of and need to be connected with other species and life forms. And, if we've been fortunate to grow up even next door to an empty lot, children know this. Children head for what's down there, what's small or what's up there and singing. And during COVID, when we two-legged stopped rushing around and were quiet and paused and poised, foxes found us here at Wiseacre. It's the only way I can describe it. And through COVID, I wrote Fox News, the only Fox News you want to read or hear every single day. And, did videos and photos,
Oh.
and thousands of people watched this, just as many people, did the outside my window sharing, because we had finally allowed those who created and helped make the habitat come home and make that biophilic connection, that interspecies connection, which is happening with so many people and so many other mammals in particular, but not only around the world. We've pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. And now when we paused, the falcons came back to the high rises in New York. The boars ran down parts of the streets of Paris. I mean, just amazing statements of, yeah, wolves and humans are now species, interconnective species. Many, many other creatures are interconnection species because humans have finally begun to recognize or reclaim how we were raised, how we were taught nature. And when my clients come, they come early, usually 20 minutes early, so that they can sit on the deck and communicate with the fox families.
Mm.
I don't even think I need to be here, honestly. Just like you're saying, that your canine American folk who are there and stimulating all of this uproariousness. Yeah,
Mhm.
I don't think you want to get rid of them.
No. Okay, Ashley.
Yeah, I thank you all for sharing. And it makes me, I wish we had more time because I want to learn more about your work, Rich and Marcy. I can envision your clients. I know of you, but I can imagine coming to your house and having this little fox refuge as my warm up. And that's making me contemplate. I work in architecture, and Josiah and I have talked a bit. We circle each other in our works and kind of have a lot of overlap. And I work lately, I've been working in wellness. I've been designing wellness, places of wellness because, as Josiah mentioned, it's very lucrative right now. It's a lucrative industry to be in. And I also believe that wellness is all, the wellness of all. And I'm thinking about how kind of some of these ideas around wellness, the interspecies wellness, and how to weave this onto projects. But more importantly, I think about just how do you bring our attention to these things around us? It seems like the foxes were more present, more visible, more vocal when we quieted down. I also had a similar COVID experience where I was in deep nature. But what I believe, and maybe someone knows this in our, in our WISE group, sometimes when you have these experiences, you don't forget it. It's long lasting. And so I think for some of us who live close to nature, that's great. We're kind of the choir. We're in the choir, but it makes me want to plant seeds with others and having these intimate connections with nature. I have a feeling that people who cry at the sight of a wolf will remember that forever. And I think that that interspecies connection creates this interdependence, this stewardship that I think is long lasting. So it makes me want to, like, in my little town here, I'm looking out the window, I'm like, there's wildlife everywhere, but I'm wondering if the kids know the species. Do they hear the songs and name the names? And so Josiah gave a reference of this living infrastructure field kits, and it makes me want to like do a survey with kids to be like, how many can we find today in the middle of January, in the middle of winter when it's more quiet? So I love the talk, but it makes me want to like dive into how to like bring the wellness of all kind of, I would like to start young to kind of turn this on to young people. So that's
Mm.
where I'm inspired at the moment.
Do you know about story maps?
I don't.
It's native to all humans. We're all born storying, and children especially. And taking children or intergenerational groups and traveling around, even if it's an inner city neighborhood, who's in the alleys, what's up on the roof. But in your small community, which is much more accessible for people, take people out and invite them to listen to the stories. What did the plants say? And also find, educational moments, but they're there already, and then have the kids map it with the stories that they've learned or shared or heard while they were in their walk. And that story map is exactly, in many ways, what most mammals will follow, whether it's scent or whether it's sight. It's all genetically passed on. And so then the children begin to understand, oh, my house is right by a stream that all the time birds are flying by like a railroad. And we need to think about how we interact with that. It's a beautiful way for a community to wake up through the children and stories and this kind of mapping.
I love it. And it sounds, thank you, Marcy. I love the idea of story mapping. It sounds way more fun for me, even as an adult, rather than plotting what are the
Yeah.
species and how many of
Mhm.
them. Thank you for that.
Mm. We're going to be bringing everyone back together. I think it's going to start happening. What a beautiful conversation. Marcy, I'm still freaking out over Fox News. I got to tell you, that is just like, that's the highlight of my month right there. It is. If you're okay, I'm going to share
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. What? Absolutely. We got to have some way to, oh God, redirect.
Hi, Marcy. So good to see
Hi,
you.
Drew. Hello. And Andrew, I've seen you occasionally on my Facebook page saying some groovy things. Thank you.
Let's see. Okay, everybody should be coming back. Here we go.
Oh man, that ended way too fast. Was that 1 minute?
That was not enough.
Oh God. I had a feeling, Josiah, I knew that that was going to be a juicy breakout. And we were all speaking over each other. So anyway, I'm not going to go first because I always have plenty of time to speak. And in the past, we've kind of said, "Hey, let one person from your triad represent you." Uh, I look at the screen in front of me right now, and I know each of your voices. And if I thought Weatherby was raising his hand. Uh, yeah. But I mean, hell, if it was up to me, I would just go around the circle and call on people because I would love to hear from each of you. So maybe we'll get to that someday, but thus far, I can rely on the initiative of each of you to say, "Oh, I got something." So please pop in with
Mm.
your observations and revelations from Josiah's beautiful presentation.
Mm, mhm.
All right.
Just go, Tone.
Yeah, I had an opportunity to talk to Josiah, and I have a business in Mexico, and there's a huge challenge with the temperature has been gradually rising every year because of the city is growing so much. There's a lot more asphalt, and one of the things we were looking at doing was trying to come up with a more brand awareness around climate change. And we just had a really good conversation as far as how do we start with that. And it all started with going back to water. So, with the conversation that I had with him, I'm really excited as far as the possibilities of starting to think about how does my business go beyond just doing what we do for business, but doing something on a greater purpose as far as helping with the awareness of climate change in the city. And we had some really great places to start. So thank you for that.
Mm.
Excited.
Jump in, folks.
I'll jump in and share. I was with Marcy and Ashley, and I think we were sharing our own. Like it was like Josiah, you were able to give us words and facts and examples of things that we can reference back to our personal lives and our experiences. It's like the obvious. It's like supporting what and giving us tools to then continue our connection on connecting to the earth and the life upon it. And a couple things. Ashley was talking about like how this conversation relates to children and raising and school environments and other, I think is a really interesting conversation. And I think it's something we've all experienced and how that works, not just professional work environments. And Marcy, I'll just share Marcy's thing. She was talking about how in her practice, how people come to her deck and will sit for 20 minutes and just commune with the fox family that lives around her property, and how in many ways when people do that, do they even need to talk to her? Do they get what they need in that first 20 minutes of sitting on the deck? And then she related that during COVID she put out, and Marcy, excuse me, but um, I don't have all the example, but she said during COVID she would put out a conversation of Fox News on a daily basis and
Yeah,
what the
funny.
foxes were talking to her on a
That's
daily
great.
basis, which I thought was just a beautiful metaphor of our world today.
Well, if I can share my thoughts, I had a really enjoyable conversation with Deanne. We're a Viad, not a triad, but um, to me the presentation was amazing, and it at a personal level, I was telling Deanne it my the way I focused on the conversation was related to, I guess, my impact in the world. And one of the things I've been doing for years is going out in community with nature. And I have found myself connecting very deeply with it and learning to hear it, to understand, to have a conversation with nature in profound ways that only I can understand, in my own language with it. And in that process, I started taking other men out into nature, and like leading the way. And
Mm,
my good friend Joseph and I, we've been developing this idea of human medicine, and for years we talked about maybe coming up with some kind of retreat. And when we started going to Baja and doing these expeditions off trail, we were like, well, maybe this could be a good place. And I remember one day we were sitting there in the middle of nowhere, day 4, and I was sitting there by the water. It was just flowing right past me, and we were taking a break, and it just hit me that all I had to do was just bring the people out here and just get out of the way. That was it. Because when you're trying to come up with some project to help other people, you're thinking, well, how can I help them? And you're trying to figure out from a personal perspective, what do I have to say or to add to people? What value do I have, or what do I say to make you heal, or whatever it is you need? And in that moment, I understood it wasn't, all I had to do was just do my work, listen to nature. And she spoke to me and said, just bring him here and just let me do my thing, and so I feel like this conversation for me, it touches on that. It's like the idea of what do we do? Um, what do we do to have an impact? And Deanna and I, we were talking about how our inner worlds reflect outside, and so all these buildings, all the cities are merely a reflection of ourselves, and so to me, it's like, well, if we want to rebuild the world, we have to rebuild ourselves, right? And if we want to um, control climate change, and we need to control human change, so it really comes down to that for me. It's like, stop
I stopped kind of allowing the weight of the world to be on my shoulders, and then just gave myself permission to just have a small impact at a small level, and then starting to share that message with others and hope that other people start taking on that work for themselves.
Mm.
Thank you,
Beautiful.
EJ. Jump in.
Okay, this is Pat. I was with three A's, um, two artists and an arborist, Tommy, Andrew, and myself. And what struck me was what you brought up, Chris, and was that a bunch of small things can make a big difference. You think you can't have an impact, but try spending an evening with a mosquito in your tent. We all have impacts, and we can all have positive impacts. I live in a real small rural community, and we started doing water restoration and rediverting stormwaters that were going to our sewage treatment plant and making wetlands. And what happened was, just like Buena Fortuna Gardens, the water started stabilizing, the red ring and blackbird habitat started coming back. All of a sudden, people want to start walking around the area. Now they want other stuff done. So we're now rehabilitating streams that were channeled, those kind of things. And my question was, how do we get things like people that are participating in the cities, like arborists, who are doing things like fire mitigation strategies, and artists who have public art, and energy workers who can help with designs to get energy to flow so people want to be near the water, because when they show up, other ideas and creativity will flow. And that's what I would like to see, is finding some way to link all of the talents that we have close to the water. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Pat.
Thanks, Pat. And that I can jump in exactly there because I was with a fabulous group of 4 people. And so it was Drew. Where are you all? Anyway, there was a bunch of them, Weatherby, and there was a
Dave.
Lionel. Oh, there, Dave. Yeah. And we were talking, we started with my complete confusion and ignorance about this term around non-point source, and I needed a deeper explanation. And I got that from these and that the whole talk for me kind of came together suddenly in this sort of aha moment that in psychology, where I work, we often talk about like there isn't one cause of, for example, anxiety or depression or whatever it is in young people. But this idea of this non-point source that you can on the other hand, and we do in the kinds of programs we develop, have one small change. And that has this incredible kind of rippling effect in all other areas, including the collective of young people that can have a massive impact. And one of the things that these young people often have never seen is change in front of them from a small thing. So when you point it out and you point out that it can be different for each person, how they can make their own change, there is something alive that happens. There's a hope that comes alive. And so I felt like your entire talk for me kind of swirled around that beautiful point, and it's not even a metaphor that you can take to the human levels as well. So thank you so much for that. Yeah.
Thanks for saying that.
Mm.
Who's up?
I'll go. Hey, everybody. I just appreciate Dave for asking about Asheville and how we're doing in these sort of related topics. And it's been amazing to go from, everyone on the ground that day and that week just knew what to do. Everybody had a job and it was pretty much in their yard or in their neighbor's yard. And then we started understanding that it was a 17 county wipeout and that everybody all over that area was doing that very same thing. So it went from streets to neighborhoods to communities to connected communities. And now it's making its way into the sort of academic educational status where there's amazing presentations monthly somewhere around about canopy reestablishment, invasive species removal, what to
Mm.
do with all this new sunlight. And then I've been working on my couple of acres here, just doing some thinning with the canopy in mind, with native species in mind. This was an oak hickory forest for hundreds and thousands of years, and it's changed into a hodgepodge of things since we all got here. And so I'm keeping the biomass on site and building um, berms and brush piles and water retention ponds. And it's just so fun to do. And I have a little toy tractor to do it with. And I consider it sculpture. And then it's not until today, Josiah, thank you, that I was like, oh, and I think I'm doing the right thing on top of all this fun. So
Mhm.
just wanted to put that out there.
Thanks, Drew. Good stuff. Careful, I'm going to call on you.
I just want to top in for a minute. Jan Erickson. I'm in Colorado Springs. And Josiah, thank you, Chris. First of all, this is amazing. But Josiah, this was like being in the forest, being with the animals. And I'm looking out in a permaculture backyard that we put in a few years ago, and just how your talk, I think, has produced multiple ideas here that is just going to keep spreading. I already know how I'm going to share this with people that I think could actually participate and grow more. It's really amazing what you have given us today. Thank you so much. And just our little permaculture, when we started doing it, then we gave tours of permaculture, see our solar, see our heat pump, see all this. We started giving tours, and out of that came several of our neighbors and friends that put in the permaculture in their
Mm.
yard too. Just little things. And I believe Colorado
Mm.
Springs is going to do one of those similar plans. It's going to take decades, like in the Guadalupe River. There's a big, big project, multi-billion-dollar project that I think the funding is still protected to go ahead and do this, where they're restoring a part of the Monument Valley Creek, which is the watershed off of Pikes Peak, where I live. Thank you again.
Amazing.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. I mean, there's a great trend of cities sort of re-embracing their rivers. There's, a dozen long at least, list of cities that have gone from putting the slum and the factory and the pollution in the river to like putting the boardwalk and the city park and really taking back those rivers. And I think having people interacting with the environment is it brings restoration, because when you're looking at it every day, you want it to be nice. When it's a garbage dump, then you just accept that, right? It's kind of appalling, the history that, like, even people, who are our age or baby boomers, whatever it is, um, don't really remember decades when our rivers were just sewage dumps.
Mm. Mm.
So it's great to hear that, more and more cities are embracing the river.
I got to personally witness John and Jan's reformation of their property. And it went from lawn to native species. And they've got a food garden. They've got a beautiful view of Pikes Peak right out their back window. And they even did a thing about restoring the historical light fixtures
Yeah.
up and down their neighborhood. And I see that I use the word mycelium, but I see the interconnection that comes from that. And I see Jan nodding her head up and down because there are so many things that are the source of this IWN thing, but it's being revealed because we're experiencing the interconnectivity. I'm wondering if anybody on my screen is going to hire you, Josiah. I'm wondering how many of you I'm going to take to the Amazon one of these days. Um, I'm wondering if the presentation that Dave Zaboski did, that Per Stoknes did, that Baylin did, that Josiah
Mm.
did, Um, are we going to, create a presentation so that each of us can go out into the world and have people over for dinner
Mm,
and say, "Hey, I'm part of this thing called IWN, and here's a compilation of the 10 speakers I've been present for this year," because
mm,
there's a complement to all those in an extraordinary way. And it is about the fractal. It is about nothing is too small to be important. I'm looking at Marcy right now because Marcy's had a grand impact on me. And I also am looking at this screen and seeing how many people, how many of you that I know that live in these idyllic environments. I do. Um, Jan does. Sarah lives in Alaska. Deanne is down in Baja and up in Salida. Pat is constantly living outdoors. Mary is on a farm in the desert chaparral of southern Utah. Ashley is in this beautiful place in Oregon and Baja. Guige is constantly doing these trips. Al, I know, is got his spot in Northern California. Isabella's
mm,
spots I've heard about. I've been to Drew's place. Weatherby goes from one corner of the continent to the other, from Maine to the tip of Baja. I mean, that is a
mm,
wild migration. So anyway, we're actually the ones that are on the leading edge. We're the ones who can kind of be the ones that tilt the compass because I see Josiah shaking, nodding his head. When we tilt the compass and aren't bashful about this, and we speak about it and make it the way we deliver ourselves to our communities, to ourselves, but we have to demonstrate it in our homes first. And
mm,
so I'm fucking motivated by your talk this morning, Josiah, and I've been so lucky to be, present with you in so many circumstances where this is what you talk about. This is how you see the world. And
mm,
you're one of the ones that's made it your career, and the world is a better place because you've made it your career. So maybe we all can move the needle, and we don't need to move it 15 degrees. We can move it one and watch
mm.
what happens.
Thanks, Chris. I mean, first of all, I think Andro has something to share, and I'll just respond to what you said there, which is, I we shouldn't have to run away to special places to be able to live that lifestyle.
Mhm.
Um, where my head is at now is I see cities as the financial engine of terra fragmentation. But that same driving force could be terraforming. And, cities are our primary terraforming agent. And why, cities don't have to be degrading the biosphere. Cities can be generators of climate restoration, and they can be safe havens for all kinds of species. Rooftops can be migratory pathways that don't have cats and other predators on them, that do have hazelnuts and other habitat and food supplies for migratory birds. The opportunity to just rethink what a city is,
Mm,
without necessarily dramatically changing the functionality of the city. It's all there. We're looking at geometry, and we're looking at texture, and we're looking at um, hospitability for biodiversity. And we know, similar to the river restoration, we know that once that biodiversity engine starts to spin, all those benefits, all those non-point source benefits start spinning off. We don't know what they are, but they turn into carbon and temperature and air quality and water quality and all those things. And I narcissistically, as a species, I think that what might really drive us is our personal health and well-being, right? So, I mean, do we really care about habitat and all those things? Yes, we do. But collectively, we make decisions based on, like, am I going to feel better if we do this? Is this going to be better for me? Am I going to enjoy
mhm,
my day more? And the answer is yes. You are going to enjoy yourself more. And it's been really interesting to be in rooms with, like, Google talking about their master plan. And you're literally scenario planning of, like, okay, is our tech engineer going to be more productive if they leave a normal building and walk down a concrete jungle to have a Subway sandwich? Or actually, if they eat or a wholesome meal and go have an interaction with a bobcat next to the creek, they're going to come back and instead of being falling asleep at their desk, they're going to be like, every single person that'll listen to the story, oh my God, I just saw a bobcat. You wouldn't believe it. This is what happened. And then they're going to go straight to their desk. And guess what? All the metrics are there. They're more innovative. They stay at their desk longer. They're more productive. They're more creative. They're less likely to take sick days, blah, blah, blah. Right. So somehow I think we're missing the connection between that personal, mental, experiential reality that we're all aware of individually and what we're actually designing for and what we're trying to create. And I think we're just trying to build that bridge between what's good for us and what we think is good for us somehow. Anyway, I don't know. Andro, you've had your hand up for a while. I'm curious what you had to say over there.
Andro, you're
Oh, thank you.
there you go.
Yes. Thank you, Chris, for this place. Thank you, Josiah. Thank you, everybody. I began in the professional world with companies that work with sustainable and resilient cities in Medellin, like your example. I evolved with the years into working with animals. It's nice to see how everything reconnects today for me. Uh, I love that I am painting the white deer in its symbolism as the boundary with the wild world. Like path remind us all is energy. Thank you, because you give me a lot of inspiration.
Beautiful.
I must say, I'm seeing all these beautiful women faces on my screen, and I'd love to hear their voices. Ashley, Marcy, Deanne, Sarah, Lindsay, anybody who's up for it.
I am so grateful, Chris, for all of these friends, colleagues, folks, family that you have brought to share because there's something that I experience with each of you that I so admire. The patience to find the science around what we already know and prove it so we're allowed to have permission to know it and show it and grow it. I don't have that patience. And I count on, as you well know, Chris, and my impatience, I think, is part of uh, what is successful in terms of my labor in the vineyard, my mission. However, the larger picture where all of these small things, just how the ocean is made by drops, all of these small things can have a bigger impact. I count on you for that. I count on you to prove what I've already proved for 65 years. And I count on then relearning. It's such a beautiful cycle. It's just such a beautiful cycle. It's what's going on in North Carolina. That cycle is coming back into the science, and the sacred in science and secular is coming forward. We can now know these things. And I think of Native people who have taught me that they have an ancient tradition of knowing a thing by becoming it, being informed. And, I come from a culture, as many of us do, where there are big bodies of male heads that tell you whether you can know something or not. You can only know it by observing it and then going through a process of vetting and jurying and so on. And so the the ways that many of you have formed your science into something that I think of as very sacred, dedicated to something other than the ordinary world is I deeply appreciate it because that is the big movement I see in our world in the 21st century. And Chris, when you develop this, I know that part of that is because you know of how sacred all of these dear friends who have fed into your life and your beautiful mission to share it So I'm grateful for that. So grateful. Thank you for these sacred sciences.
Mm.
Mm.
Gracias, Marcy.
Definitely echo what Marcy is saying, and just hearing Josiah speak and other people share. The thing that really strikes me is this knowing that we've all had, and just hearing you, Josiah, say that all this, even though I feel like a lot of our building structures do represent this like closedness and detachment from nature within ourselves, I also feel like there's this beautiful faith and inspiration knowing that that is framework and groundwork for being able to put on this like green and um, coexisting kind of layer where we can just open up ourselves and like our vision to welcoming in animals and sharing the space again and getting back to that true knowing of ourselves. And it has me thinking of um, just the beauty of that if we can follow our truth and let that shine through, like even if our motivation might be for like increasing productivity, just that if we're honest with ourselves with what is important, it can lead us to the truth. And I find that really,
Mm.
really inspiring and beautiful that it's not some sort of, lie we have to tell ourselves. Like if we're really strip it down, it's the truth that can lead us to these connections and this hope that we see. And I really find that to be a really beautiful thing. And thank you,
Mm.
everyone.
Gracias, Deanne. It's 11:25. We do a pretty good job of starting at the top of the hour and finishing at the bottom of the hour. So this would be the time in some of you are familiar with temperature readings for something called burning desires. And it's a time to get quiet and go into yourself and is and it goes to the very first thing I spoke about being in groups and feeling the friction and feeling the uh, out of controlness. So uh, now, if there is a feeling, a concept, something that when you go inside and address it and go, oh, I'm going to speak this, I'm going to bring this forth. Now would be the time to do that. And after that, we'll have our appreciation for Josiah and move on. Any burning desires?
I'd like to be in the same physical place with all of you at once.
Mm.
Mm.
Aho, me too.
Mm.
Mm.
I have a burning desire to embody the belief that a little is enough.
Amen.
I wrote the bigger is not better. Um, I feel like having a focus on my impact and allowing that to be the bigger is uh, is really exciting to me.
Thank you, Tony. As soon as you said that, I thought better is bigger.
Mm.
Mm.
Turn it on its head.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you.
I have a simple burning desire. Josiah, what river did you grow up on in Northern California? That picture looks familiar.
South Fork of the Trinity.
Yeah.
Oh.
Wild and scenic, actually.
Yeah.
It's got a clear
Beautiful.
path through the Trinity, through the Klamath. And many of you know the Klamath is an increasingly clear path as well.
Yeah, that's a great story. Uh, Burning desire. Uh, Man, my life would be complete if over the course of the next 2 or 4 or 8 days, I hear Jan say, I reached out to Josiah. I hear Deanne say, I reached out to Isabella. I hear Andro say, I wrote Marcy a text, or Ashley called Tony, or whatever. This is the I can't even tell you how explosive it is to me, but we are the connective tissue. We are the organ, right? We're taking the
Mm-hmm.
atom to the cell, to the organ, and creating that mycelial connective tissue. And it's one thing for us to sit in solitude and go, oh, that was a great meeting. It's another thing for us to reach out, maybe if just to say, hey, what you mentioned really touched me. And so that's why I'm constantly encouraging the giving voice to things. And I've had such, good training over the years from Marcy and Stephen and various other powerful teachers in my life. So we're at 11:29, and thank you all for taking this 90 minutes of your
Can I
day this
say
morning.
one quick thing, Chris?
Yes, yes, Weatherby.
I have a burning desire to see how the work you're doing here with IWN can be more integrated with what we, Drew, you, myself, and Catherine have with Puente Institute. It's really a part and parcel of this idea that we've developed over time about the fusion of art, science, and spirit, and I think we're going to have a resurgence here. And I can tell you, I've been working hard on the science side, but also on the hope and sort of spirit side too. And it's great to see what you've built with IWN. And really, I think of that also as Puente, and it's a bridge, and it's a beautiful thing that Drew started a long time ago. So that's what I want to share.
Gracias, Weatherby. Okay, folks, love to hear from you if you have any reflections or suggestions on how to move forward. And Marcy, I appreciate your words, and I'm going to send an invitation out for our in-person gathering. And I would like you all to give it serious consideration and be willing to say yes within 60 seconds of getting the invitation.
Mm.
Okay.
Mm.
Adios.
Adios,
Adios.
amigos.